as someone who has aspirations of a career in sports broadcasting, it is an absolute pleasure to be joined by Sky Sports News presenter Julian Warren. But seeing as the both of us are Evertonians, really, I think there's only one place to start. Monday evening, 8 p.m. to be exact, Everton announced the signing of Colombian international James Rodriguez on a 2-year deal from Real Madrid. So, Julian, thanks ever so much for joining me. I'm sure with your work and all, you've been submerged in Everton's transfer activity over the last couple of weeks. What was your response to James finally being confirmed as an Everton player last night?
Yeah, good to speak to you. Thanks for having me on. The frustration for all Evertonians was the wait, wasn't it? That's the worst bit. The wait is, it's only natural that we're pessimistic, isn't it? You start thinking this is going to fall through, he's going to change his mind, there's going to be a medical issue or something. So that wait seemed to have gone on for weeks, didn't it? But to finally see it come through, it's like I said to you on Insta last night. I think if you'd said to us a year ago, Ancelotti will be your manager and you'll be signing James Rodriguez, we'd be like, yeah, right, whatever. But, the stars have aligned, it's come to that. And I'm split. Part of me, I'm trying to be the positive optimist. I think what a player he was 6 years ago, best player at the World Cup. Real Madrid, 13 goals, 13 assists in 29 games the following season. Mm-hmm. Great year with Carlo at Bayern Munich. So he knows him well. He gets the best out of him. He loves playing for him. And he's a world-class player on his day. But there is then the Evertonian inside me that comes through and thinks, he's not done it for a couple of years, has he? But in fairness, he's not played many games. He's not had many chances. He's been out of favour at Real Madrid. His face didn't fit with Zidane. I think Gareth Bale knows all about that. So, here he is, big name. He's going to be the main man. And, it could turn into a master stroke. For 22 million, why not? Give it a go, and he could be a superstar for us.
No, most definitely. And, you touched on it there. I think the most anxious moments of it all really was that wait last night. I think everyone was saying, it's going to be 5 o'clock. Oh, it's going to be 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And as I say, 8 o'clock, the news was finally announced. And amongst the madness of Evertonians online last night, one of the things that really stuck with me, it was a tweet that came out by the great Alan Myers saying that Everton have plans. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but basically Everton have plans to hugely expand their presence and their marketing within Colombia and the South American market. So just how important do you think that is for Everton to expand their global reach with, the signing of such a global superstar?
I think, for Evertonians living in this country, we might say, well, the most important thing is to get successful on the pitch and start winning stuff again. That's what we want to see. And of course it is. But yeah, the modern world of football it's your brand, isn't it? You've got to be big in this country and you've got to have the worldwide brand. And, bringing Carlo Ancelotti in was a major step on making us a European force again. And now to bring in, we've already got Richarlison, haven't we? And Alan joining him. So you've got that Brazil box ticked. And now to touch, get into Colombia as well. I know Yerry Mina's been there as well. But this guy, James Rodriguez is following on, Instagram, Twitter. It's massive, isn't it? And he's one of the biggest global sports stars, I think. So it is important. And, but I just think it's a long way. It's a big project. We're a long way from being, a worldwide footballing force. I think until we have success on the pitch, for me, that comes later. But of course, having a player like him can only help. And the extra finances it will bring in, interest from abroad, it's a positive. But my primary goal is seeing us win matches on the pitch, seeing James star and start winning trophies again.
Yeah. You raise an excellent point there, and I suppose, as I say, someone who's 22 years of age and never seen us win silverware, for us to be, still one of the most successful clubs in the country, and not won something for so long, that certainly should take precedence. But as you say there, you touched on his social reach, and I looked into it last night. I think he's got approaching 50 million Instagram followers across all platforms. I think it's nearing, 95 to 100 million, which is absolutely insane. And in regards to, football and superstars, I think he's the 4th most followed footballer on social media. So just on that, I was talking with, Evertonian friends last night, and I put the question to them, really, is this the biggest signing that we've seen in our lifetime? Obviously, it is in terms of a player with a social reach, such as James. In your time of following Everton, obviously, you've supported the club for all your life. Have you any other sort of huge stars that spring to mind when looking back? And do you think this is the biggest of them all?
Do you know, I was thinking before, I can't think of a bigger name that we've signed. I can't remember another one. I'll tell you what, speaking to you before we came on and you talked about struggling to sleep last night, the only one that I can remember in my lifetime that had a similar impact on me was when we brought in Andre Kanchelskis. And I was just blown away by that signing. I was so excited. It just blew my mind because, seeing him playing for Man United, tearing down the wing, scoring goals, pinpoint crosses. That was the last time I thought, wow, I can't believe we've got this guy. And obviously he did a great job for a few years for us and was in the 95 team and all the rest of it. So Kanchelskis was the last one I remember that really got me thinking we brought in a superstar here. But no, I think James, you cannot argue. I mean, have we had a World Cup Golden Boot winner signed for us in the last 20, 30 years?
Gary Lineker wasn't he?
Since Lineker. Yeah, I guess Lineker, yeah. But I mean, it's been that long, isn't it? So certainly I've been supporting Everton since I was 8, so 30 mumble years. So I think it's the biggest signing, the biggest name, certainly. Not the biggest fee, of course, but the biggest name.
Yeah, of course. And for me, fairly, I mean, I grew up obviously watching. I think the team that attracted me most to football, Everton aside, obviously, I think it was around the 2006 Barcelona team. So under Frank Rijkaard, and we did end up signing Sammy Walletto. A lot of people do forget that, and I think that's another name that springs to mind. But just for the the audience, a grand old team and whatnot, just to touch on, I think what makes sport, obviously, and what makes people so passionate about sport is those personal preferences and those subjective meanings to the individual. So in terms of, as you say, following Everton as a boy, what are some of your fondest memories? And have you got any sort of games, goals, or players that spring to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on the Wirral side. It was blue or red in the mid '80s. It was that was your choice, and I went blue. And my half brothers, my best mate, went red. And obviously they've been winning things ever since. But yeah, at the time we were winning stuff, weren't we? We were one of the best teams in the land. And my memories of Everton are me and my dad taking me along, sort of age 7 or 8, I think 87. So I was a bit of a glory hunter first year when we won the league. When I started going. And my dad used to take me along, and I was dressed up in my little Everton tracksuit. We used to park at the other side of the Anfield Cemetery and walk through the cemetery, and the ground just appears, doesn't it, on the horizon, just sort of looms up large. And of course, as a little lad, you see this great place come up in front of you, and it's just like spine tingling. I get the goosebumps thinking about it now, and you hear the music and the smells of the food outside, and the same tunes George Harrison being played on the radio inside the stadium on the tannoy. So I just got great memories of going as a lad. Sadly, these days I don't get there as much, obviously, because living in down south and working in London, it's tricky. I've got a young family as well, so I can't get to as many games as I'd like. But fond memories. I had a season ticket for a number of years as well. In terms of games that stand out and goals, for me, actually, goal-wise, I don't think anything more significant for me than the ride-out FA Cup final goal in '95, just because it's the last goal we scored that won us anything.
Yeah.
The perfect counter-attack. I was at home with my mates because I was about 16, 17, so I think I was sixth form, watching it in my lounge with my mates. He scored, I jumped up, took out the lampshade in my mum and dad's lounge. And actually, I got to speak to him and Graham Stewart a couple of months ago. Did a feature for Sky Sports about 25 years since our last trophy. And they were very good to speak to me about that. And Rideout says, he still dines out on it now, biggest goal he ever scored. And he works in America, but he says, young lads who he coaches come in with their phones and YouTube going, was this you? Was this you? But that was such a big goal, wasn't it? That for me really stands out as the last moment when, being an Evertonian, we could say, yeah, we're winning stuff again. And sadly, we're still waiting for another moment like that. But hopefully it's not far away now.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think so with, signings such as these. You would really like to think that the tides are turning. And on Everton note too, obviously there you talk to some of that squad that won the FA Cup in '95. Graham Stewart, Paul Rideout. Are there any interviews over your time that really stick to memory with Everton stars?
I mean, not specific interviews, but certainly I still pinch myself now that doing the job I do at Sky and working on Soccer Special. Some of the guests I have on. Tony Cottee, legend for me. I was there as a 10-year-old the day he scored a hat-trick on his debut against Newcastle. That was one of my first games again. Went with my dad. This new guy had signed for us, didn't know a lot about him, and he banged in a hat-trick. And many years later, he's on my panel, and having a drink afterwards. And you're just like, wow, I was cheering this guy's name from the stands when I was a 10-year-old, and here I am working with him. And the other one is Graham Sharp, the one and only, the legend that is Graham Sharp. We had him on Soccer Specials, and again, an absolute legend of a man, and one of the nicest guys you'll meet as well. I think yourself, and having him on Soccer Special, and eventually played in a Soccer Saturday golf day, Christmas golf day with him against Ray Houghton and Phil Thompson for Liverpool, and we combined to beat them, which was a nice Merseyside derby win. So
I haven't had one of them in a while.
No, I don't know exactly. Only on the golf course. In fact, Sharpie did all the winning of the points. It was just, I just stood there and hacked around really. But so I think that's, for me, that's what's so special about doing my job, that I'm working alongside guys I used to idolise, and now you treat them as colleagues and friends even. And when I see Graham back at Goodison, along with Graham Stewart and all the other guys, everyone's so friendly and welcoming. That's Everton for you, isn't it?
Fantastic. That's really great to hear. And I mean, we talked a little bit about him just shortly before recording. It's hard not to mention him when you're talking about Everton Football Club at the moment, and it certainly seems to be the first talking point for anyone outside of the Everton bubble when looking at Everton at the present moment. But the coup of Carlo Ancelotti, obviously, it's attributed the entire reason why we are attracting the likes of Alan from Napoli and James Rodriguez from Real Madrid. What have you made to his life starting as Everton manager? And I'd just like to ask, obviously, you have experienced a fair bit. What do you think differentiates him and makes him different from Everton managers of the past?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? Great question. I guess if you look at the managers we've had recently, certainly, Marco Silva, new, pretty unproven. Roberto Martinez, he'd had the cup win with Wigan, but was still looking to establish himself. Going further back than that, Koeman, yes, he was a name, but you could argue still on the biggest of stages had to prove it as a coach, and obviously he's going to try and do that at Barcelona now. But Carlo Ancelotti has been there, worn every single T-shirt you can wear, and has got a CV pretty much unrivaled in the game. I mean, apart from Sir Alex, Mourinho, maybe Pep, I don't think you can. There's no one else that you can hold up a CV next to his and say it's anything like it. So for me, that's the big difference. I just wish we'd had him in a bit earlier, but obviously the way things have worked out, we wouldn't have had him a few years earlier. Now is the time. There are those that argue that maybe he's peaked and he's not the manager he was, but I think the skills he's clearly inherited over the years. He's a proven winner. You're not going to lose that overnight. And I think the respect he'll instantly command with the players. They all say it, don't they? When they play for him. I'm playing for Carlo Ancelotti, and when he talks, you listen. And I think we've seen the pull he's had on Rodriguez and Alan. He's just got that charisma. He's got the CV, and he's obviously a great coach as well. But I just think the stature of the man is the difference, I think, for us. And that is what I think our club needed, just to remind people who we are. We need a top draw manager. There's no disrespect to anybody who went before, but Carlo Ancelotti's CV, for me, for where we want to get to, is the difference. And yeah, he's never had a challenge like Everton probably in the last 30 years. He normally goes into clubs that are successful and are winning things and just tinkers and puts his arm around everybody and they go on and win more. But I think this challenge seems to suit him. He seems up for it. He seems up to making his mark. And I think just give him a couple of years. The signings we're seeing, I was worried he might not get the finance because of the difficulties at the moment that maybe some of his predecessors got. But from the signings he's making, I think we can dare to dream.
Most definitely, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's exactly what the club needed. A manager of that stature, somebody who commands respect for the group of players that I don't think anyone would be too far wrong to say they haven't lived up to what had been expected of them over the past several years. For somebody like him to come into Goodison Park and put his stamp on things, we're obviously seeing that now with the recruitment. They are certainly players that have worked under him before and have really excelled under his coaching. And it looks now finally that we've got that balance correct between director of football and manager. Obviously, full compliments go to Marcel Brands and the business that he's been able to do with the reported figures on the deals. And I mean, Jules, you talked about it earlier, but this coming season, are we optimistic, or is the pessimist Evertonian still at surface level, ready to accept, the struggles of what have been the past couple of years?
I mean, if we're not pushing for seventh this season, there's something wrong, isn't there? No, I joke. I mean, no. The problem is, I look back to the final 2 months of last season, and this is the one downside about Ancelotti so far. I think he came in at a difficult time. Duncan steadied the ship. It's been a difficult season. COVID came. You almost have to write off last season, but I can't help but think back to some of those performances at the end of last season. I think we've got to go a long way to come from there to where we want to be. But as I say, if I'm positive, I'm going to write that off as just an exceptional season for all the wrong reasons. We start afresh now. He's sorted that midfield out. Once Decore hopefully comes in later today as we're speaking, he's sorted that midfield out. I'm excited by Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, and I think Keane might get a few more games this season. I think we might start to see what we paid the money for him. I think he showed a few touches in a few of the last games for me to be excited about Moise Keane again. And then at the back, I think we're pretty solid there. I think we could do with the right back challenge for Seamus and cover at left back. And yeah, you could argue a better goalkeeper to push Jordan all the way. But I think the midfield was where we needed to sort out. He's done that. And, a lot of clubs are still going through transitions. Jose's still trying to settle in at Spurs. Arteta, yeah, he's made steps forward, but he's still got work to do at Arsenal. Wolves and Sheffield United had a good season. No guarantees they'll back it up this season. So I think sixth, if we can get sixth, I think that has got to be the target. Ancelotti has not come in to be happily finishing seventh, eighth, ninth, is he? That's not what he's there for. He wants European football. Yeah, we want the Champions League, of course we do, but I think it's got to be baby steps. And if you offer me sixth now, absolutely snatch your hands off for it.
European football, we're certainly a name that most certainly deserves it. And now to push on to my own sort of career sort of orientated questions, if you will. You did touch on it there. We are coming off the back of the longest season in English football history for all the wrong reasons. Just how happy are you that football is finally looking, to return to some sort of normality, some sort of schedule? I know it's been bizarre for everybody involved in the industry. So, as I say, just how happy are you that football is back? And what are the type of changes that you've had to adapt to over the last few months?
Yeah, it just makes such a difference when it came back at the end of last season. Just, primarily as a football fan, being able to watch games again. You really start to miss it, don't you, after 3 or 4 months without it? I know it's not the same not being able to go to games for supporters, but at least we've got football to watch on TV now. So yeah, having that back as a fan, and secondly, as that's the industry I'm in, just being able to cover matches again, have a guest come into the studio to follow a game and to have that excitement again. For me, that just, we kept broadcasting at Sky Sports News, obviously throughout COVID and the lockdown, and we're bringing people up to date with what was happening, with how it was spreading, and events that were being cancelled and stuff. But we didn't, of course, have any live sport to cover. So just having that again, I'm going in tonight. I'll be covering the England game, and then got Soccer Special coming back next week with League Cup and Everton and all the rest of it. So suddenly it feels like my life is getting back to some semblance of normality again. So that'll make a big difference. But it's been a huge challenge. I mean, working at Sports News throughout it all, I was down from sort of 4 days a week to 1 day a week because of social distancing. They cut the presenters from 10 to 2 because we were doing so fewer hours just to make it, to be able to get through, because suddenly you had an office that normally has, 80, 90, 100 people in. It was down to 10, 12 people in. So they could only do so much. And just to keep the station on air and broadcasting as well as we did, I think was quite an achievement. But gradually things are coming back now, and we've still got a lot of restrictions there and what we can do. And Sky have done a great job with the social distancing and all the rest of it. But yeah, it feels like it's getting back to. I think I can sit in a soccer special studio with a panel of 4 guests alongside me. I think that's going to be a while away. At the moment, they're split in 2 different studios. I shall find out next week how challenging that might be. But we're getting there slowly, because it's been a strange old time, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's good to hear. It is certainly unprecedented times, and I think one of the byproducts of this has been the Zoom revolution that we've seen. The type of things that we're certainly doing today. And just to delve into, just to give a bit of background on myself, if you will, because I'm sure there's a lot of students that listen to this that will learn a lot from it. I'm supposed to be graduating from UCFB Etihad campus. I've done a degree in business and media. Obviously, it specialises in the football industry and career paths in that sense. I've completed modules in the likes of broadcasting and television production. Looking at someone such as yourself, you've been a mainstay at Sky for, what is it, 12, 13 years now?
Yeah, I know, unbelievable, yeah.
Which is absolutely, that's a huge credit to yourself. And, pressure is a privilege in a sense. I love that saying, because I think it certainly is true. Just, if you wouldn't mind, could you walk me through your career path and how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the kind words, by the way, Max. That's really good of you. If I get boring, just stop me, okay? How far back should I go? So I'll try and speed up the first bits. I did an English literature degree, which is when I'd started to realise I wanted to get into broadcasting. So I did a bit of student radio while I was doing that. I'd done hospital radio before. I think I did a work experience at Radio City when I was a sort of teenage lad. Managed to get myself a week there. Then while I was at Sheffield doing that English degree, I applied for a postgraduate diploma at University of Central Lancashire, Preston, which had great facilities. It had its own TV studio, radio studios, and I knew I wanted to sort of focus on broadcasting journalism for a year before I tried to get into the industry itself. And so that was where I really learned what was all about, how it works, how to use your voice, how TV works, how radio works. It was a great course, really intensive. I went from doing sort of 8 hours a week as an English student to sort of 9 hours a day. It was like a proper job, which is what you need. You have to work hard in this business. So that was great. Learned loads there. We had a load of visiting news editors. We did sort of news days when we were basically like a radio station or a TV station, and we'd have visiting news editors come in from radio stations around the country or TV companies, and they would be in and have a look at you and help you on the day. And that's where I got spotted, if that's the right word, by a great guy called John Pickford, who I think still is the head of news at Key 103 Piccadilly in Manchester. He's a bit of a legend in those parts, and he saw something in me, thankfully, and got me a work placement with them. And that's where eventually, when I left my course, I got my first job. So radio for me was my way into Sky. And actually, a lot of the presenters there, that's the way they came in, because you learn so much in that medium. You don't have to worry about what's going on here. You can just purely work on, working on your voice, your skills, your reading, if you're doing bulletins. So that was brilliant. Yeah, and I had sort of 8 years in radio in Manchester, and then in Sheffield, where I was head of sport there for a number of years at a regional station there. And then from there, after 6 months travelling with my wife abroad, quit our jobs, went to London, got a work placement at Sky, did a bit of freelancing around radio there, and got my screen test that I'd been dreaming for. Sky Sports was the place I wanted to work. It was what I was aiming towards, and the dream became reality. Lucky enough, a few weeks later, I was on air on Sports News, and the rest is history. So that's how it all worked out. I mean, I had my luck along the way. You have to have a bit of good fortune. I think
most definitely.
When I got to Sports News, they were looking for a new presenter at the time, and I happened to have my screen test, which went well, and so I got in. But no, a lot of hard work on the way. Particularly in the radio days, a lot of long days, long nights, weekends. Giving up stuff you normally do with your mates on a Saturday. I'd be doing the sports show or whatever, or traveling to a match or whatever. So you have to graft, you have to put in the hours. And I've done a bit of networking over the years and met people. So that's how it happened, really. So yeah, I've had good fortune, but I like to think I've probably worked hard as well, and that's paid off.
No, most definitely. I would I can see similarities to myself in the modern era, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Obviously, you said you had great success with radio, and in this
Mm.
new media age, if you will. I'm ever so grateful to UCFB, who basically give me the green light to run podcasts for them, and host their podcasts. And
Yeah.
that's given me some fantastic opportunities. I've recorded at places like Wembley and the Etihad. And I've had the chance to speak to some, absolutely fantastic people within broadcasting, the legends such as Elton Wellesby. I've spoke to Clive Tilsley too. And as you say there, another key point I think anyone should take from this is that you've always got to be open to learning, in a sense, whether that's, how to pitch your voice, how to, coming from me, how to drop the accent and how to control it, as I say. And then from the technical side of things, if you're looking at any sort of sports production or broadcast, what type of shots do and don't work, and things such as that. So as I mentioned there, I have spoke to some fantastic people, not just sports people, but broadcasters as well. Did you have any particular big influences or inspirations in terms of people within sports media growing up?
I think certainly when the first work experience I mentioned was at Radio City, when the legends that were Graham Beecroft and Kevin Keatons were like running the show there, and they were the voices I heard every weekend on Radio City, listening to the blues and stuff. So I suppose they were the first voices, the first radio commentary and radio presenting in sport I got to listen to, and I like the way they do that, and sort of got to just listen to them lots and hear how they did things, and sort of seeing them work for a week or two was great. I think on TV, like all football fans, sports fans of my age, the great Des Lynam was the guy everyone looked up to and worshipped. And he just, he had the authority, the gravitas, but he had that warmth. He's engaging, the humour, which are all things which I, whether successfully or not, try and bring to my own presentation when I can. People might disagree when I manage to achieve that, but that's what I try and do. Because I think if I'm at home watching football, watching sports presentation, I want to feel that person that I like them, that they're likable, that I trust what they say. I want to hear what they've got to say, and that's what I look for. So Des was definitely an inspiration for me, and then people like Steve Ryder, John Inverdale, Hazel Irvine, all of these people, just for me, polished, professional, watchable broadcasters. And the big influence on me most recently, when I was just finding my way in radio, and he's only a few years older than me, a couple of years older than me, is Dan Walker at the BBC.
Mm-hmm.
When I got that first job at Key 103 in Manchester, I did a bit of a news and sport role. I was doing both, but he was the head of sport. So I'd work on his sports show and go off and cover Bolton or Man City or whatever it was at the time. And Dan was just a couple of years further on than me. Great guy, brilliant lad, funny guy, but just really helpful, supportive. And I just learned a lot working alongside him at the weekends on a Friday with the press conference and stuff, just watching what he did and just sort of soaking it all in, sponge-like, trying to absorb what he was doing. He was great, and he's supportive still now for me. So I'd always say, it's all about learning, like you mentioned before. It's just taking advice from people, taking it all in, watching, observing. You're not going to be able to do it straight away. Just watching how radio works, TV works, podcasts, it's all different skills. So, the more you can take on board, the better for the long run, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. As you say, they all do require different skills, but particularly in this current media climate, it is extremely useful to be able to be a jack of all trades. If that makes, if you get what I'm saying, I do think that is incredibly useful to be able to go into each media form with the same level of confidence, almost, and assuredness that you're going to perform your job to a high standard, or at least hope that people who go into these sort of roles or aspire to be in these roles do have high standards set for themselves. So as you say there, with Sky Sports being almost as if you're your guiding star at the top, you're obviously in the role now. You've been there for several years, and as I say, I've done, say, student modules on broadcasting, and to be there in front of the camera while there's nothing short of chaos going on all around you. What are some of the things that you've learned? Have you got any tips? And are there any sort of, not necessarily lows, but any experiences that you've been through that you've learned from and thought, you know what, that's never going to happen again.
Yeah, I mean, live TV stuff goes wrong. That's the way it is. Yeah, I mean, definitely had moments that I thought, oh, that was shocking. I'm always quite self-critical, which I think is a good thing as well. I'm yet to come off air after any show and think, wow, that was brilliant, that was amazing. Which sometimes is a bad thing, but in many ways I think it's a good thing. I'm always striving for perfection that I'll never reach, but I think you've got to hold high standards for yourself. Yeah, my lowest moment probably, and I'm sure it's out there on YouTube still for all to see, was the ill-fated Carabao Cup draw with John Salaka, which you may have seen. So whenever they mention Carabao Cup and draw in the same sheet, I won that the week. We got all sorts of errors that went wrong on the day. There were various reasons which I can use to back up why it went wrong. But anyway, it was one of those days, and it's like you say, it's a learning curve, and you have to learn what went wrong and make sure it doesn't happen again. But certainly doing Soccer Special, for example, I mean, you talk about sort of, chaos behind the scenes, and wow, that show, when it's a busy night and the goals are flying in, when it's all going on in your ear, you've got 3 or 4 people, talking to each other, barking instructions, get us here, get there, there's a goal there, let's get to this person, trying to pull it all together with the guests in the studio and the guys out of the grounds, and got your stats and the video printer going. That's where sort of all my experience comes in, I suppose, all the experience I've picked up over the years in radio and TV, just to remember that no matter how much is going on in there, and you're stressing, your heart's doing that, you've got to, on the face of it, be as calm and controlled as possible. Of course, you want the energy and excitement on that show, but if you're looking like you've lost it, don't know what's going on, then the whole show can fall apart, really. So, organised chaos is probably the word. But I mean, I love that, that sort of thrill of the buzz that anything could happen. That's what you want, Not when I started out at Sky, probably my first ever shift. All I wanted was just 2 hours of auto cue, nothing breaking, nice and, straightforward. But now you want stuff to happen. You want breaking news. You want goals flying in. You want controversy and drama. So it just comes with experience. The old swan analogy of, underneath your legs doing that, but on the surface, you've got to be cool and calm. But that only comes with experience. You learn skills, you learn ways of filling maybe when something's going on in your ear, just buying yourself a bit of time until it becomes clear what you're doing next. But that takes time, comes with experience.
Definitely. And there's something that I picked up on there, just on a personal note, really, which I found really, really interesting, is that you say, you're very self-critical, and you never come away from a show thinking, you know what, I've nailed it. There's always room for improvement, and you can always do better. Whenever I do a podcast, no matter who it's with, whether it's, a friend looking to promote something or someone such as yourself, I always look to come away from a podcast having learned one particular lesson, always looking to have taken something away from it. And I remember, I think it was my second podcast, one of the things that I came away from, it was a great soundbite from one of the guests, was that strive for excellence, not perfection.
Yeah.
If you're expecting perfection from yourself, you're always going to come up short, and it's always going to bite at you and make you insecure in a sense. So, as I say, just on a personal note, does that never go away? Is that always going to be something that's there, just niggling away?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. I try and tell myself to go easy on myself sometimes, but I think that comes with the wanting to do a good job. And it's very good what you said about the excellence rather than perfection. Strive for excellence, but that is a target I always aim for. But there's always things that will go wrong, and over the years I've probably learned to accept them a little better. But I still will drive home after my shift and think, why did I ask that question, or why did I phrase that? Why I meant to use that stat? I totally forgot. That would have been a belt. That would have got me to that. I should have. So I'll always do that, but I try and see that as a positive. But I probably should go easy on myself sometimes. But I try and see that as a positive. That I'm always trying to, like you say, improve. I'm always trying to think, well, I could have done that differently. The one thing I don't do, which I should do more, which we're always told to do, is watch back or listen back to what you do. I'm the worst person for doing it. If it's on, I'm just get it off. Can't watch it. That again is something that maybe it'll get easier over the years. But as I say, I try and see it as a positive, that I'm always trying to, get better and improve. And I think it's better that way than being complacent and finishing thinking, "Wow, that was good," and people behind you thinking, "Okay." I think it's better to be that way, but don't go too hard on yourself. Sleepless nights have eased. Thankfully now.
No, I share that with you too. I can't stand to listen or watch myself back really. But one of the questions that I've got down that I really do want to ask, because I feel like it's really interesting to get the perspective of someone who is, there at the very peak of the industry really, is that you touched on there, you've gone from wanting these very organized 2-hour slots where everything goes rhythmically and smooth to, basically being the face of organized chaos. We touched on COVID, and I suppose the impact of that on the industry is yet to fully unfold. But one of the other huge sort of revolutionary moments for football, the football industry and British football really, I did my recent dissertation on this, was the investment from broadcasters and the introduction of the 24/7 news cycle, basically. So I was just wondering, from your perspective, obviously you're someone who's been there whilst the shift has occurred. What are some of the biggest changes that you had to make, and different expectations you had to set for yourself as those changes occurred?
I suppose for me, because I came into Sky Sports News when the 24/7 revolution had already happened. So that's what I've been used to ever since I've been there. And the fact it's still sports news probably is the only one still going strong, doing what it's done. Others have tried to do it, but it needs a lot of financial support, and it needs the rights that Sky have got, so you can show the goals and the golf shots and the boxing fights and the rest of it. So I've been used to that sort of rolling sports coverage. That's been my life as a TV presenter in my 12 years there. That's what I've always done. So it's been no different for me. But I think that certainly the sporting media landscape has changed so dramatically in the 12 years. I mean, the podcast you're doing today, I mean, when I first started out, there was nothing like this. So there's so many more opportunities now for people to have a platform and to find their way in. So the times have changed dramatically. I'm still a bit sort of stuck in my ways with, I did all the journalism course and then did the radio, and I always talk to people about my experience. That's how I got into it. But there are so many different ways now to get that platform for yourself, to get that foot in the door. So I'm not sure I really answer your question there, but sports news, that's always been my life. That's the way I've been used to that sort of, hour by hour, 24/7 breaking news, rolling news. It's always been the way I've done it.
Okay, so it's just sort of a takeaway from that is that it's consistently a changing machine, and I suppose it goes alongside technology, and that it really always will be, in a sense.
Yeah.
On a sort of looking at rounding up the podcast now, again, it's always great to hear this from people such as yourselves, in regards to the different experiences that they've had that have really sort of fed their passion for it going forward. We touched on Everton individuals earlier on in the podcast, but as a whole, and during your time at Sky in general, may not necessarily have been at Sky, just during your whole experiences within sports media and whatnot, any interviews or experiences that really fed your passion for what you do?
Fed my passion. Let's think. I mean, I've always that's been one of the buzzes of the job for me, is meeting big names, managers, players. That gives me the real buzz when you get to know these guys, and that's what I'm privileged to do that on Soccer Special. You see some of these huge names coming into the studio, and I get to know them on a bit of a personal level, which is always that's really exciting me. That drives me as well. Meeting these guys. I've been very lucky to interview and work alongside actually a lot from my radio days, because of course Sky, I'm very much studio based, so my job is basically in the four walls in London, and it's who comes into the studio, whether it be personally or on the outside feed or whatever. But doing the radio, I was always down at the training grounds, interviewing the managers and the players. And, some of the names you meet, Sam Allardyce, met him. Kevin Keegan, I used to interview him at Manchester City. A couple of times I was sent down to interview Sir Alex, and that's an education, just watching a man like that, the power he had and the control he had over the media, seeing men twice my age stood outside his room waiting to go in. looking rather nervous and anxious about speaking to the great Sir Alex. But yeah, so all those experiences of interviewing great people like that have helped drive me. Then there's been the tough times I've had. I've mentioned it on a previous interview with Joe Royle, obviously another Everton absolute legend, and I was with Dan Walker at Ipswich covering Manchester City on the day City got relegated there many years ago, and I went down to do the interview afterwards. Dan was still on air, and I hadn't done many of those sort of interviews. I was still quite new to it.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't sure what I was going to ask. Had no idea really. How do you ask a first question to a manager who's just been relegated? And my first question was very clumsy, badly phrased, and Joe walked out on me after one question. And obviously the Evertonian inside me died a little bit, going, "Oh, Joe Royce just walked out on me." The professional, the new broadcaster, just trying to find my way, was absolutely devastated. Those are the moments, like we said earlier, sort of learning curves when you think, right, well, next time I'll ask that differently. And you have to go through all those moments, you know. So yeah, I've interviewed some cracking people, not just in the football world. There's some brilliant boxing names in Klitschko and Anthony Joshua, who's a good guy and is always in all that. It's all part of the fun of the job. That and the football and being on Soccer Special, that sort of thing. It's a great job.
Oh, I can only imagine. And as I say, I've certainly got my sights set on it for the future. And to look at rounding the podcast up now, Jules, as I say, when doing these podcasts, not only for myself but for the audience listening, and I always do like to get, you know, points, taking points from it that, you know, you can learn from and apply to, I suppose, any walks of life. But especially with media in mind, what principles do you think have attributed to your success over the 12 or 13 years, and what advice would you give to, for example, students looking to emulate the same?
Good question. I would always just say, I always advise people, don't expect it to happen overnight. And I think clearly yourself, you're clearly working hard, you're doing the podcast, you're putting in all the extra work you can do to build yourself a platform, to get known, to build up a load of work you can put to people and say, this is what I do, which is a great thing to do, which any potential employer would be impressed by. So it's not going to happen overnight. You know, you've got to put in the hours, you've got to put in the extra work, you've got to put feelers out, get to know people, go and do work experience placements, as many as you can. Of course, for nothing, making tea, whatever it is to start off with, until you know, people think, oh, well, just see if you can do that, or send him off to do that. And that tends to be the way people find a way in, you know. And if you work hard, you're pleasant around the office, you might get sent out and something, and I don't know, the reporter gets ill and you're suddenly asking the questions, and little moments like that. And it's funny how often, and I've found it, when you work hard and you're prepared to graft a bit, those little lucky moments, those little moments of fortune, and that door opening comes to you. So work hard. Don't be put off by knockbacks, I suppose. I've had a couple in my time. I think back to, I was talking about my path into the broadcasting earlier, and getting into Central Lancashire, where I did my postgrad. You know, I actually, on the interview day to get onto that course, was on the reserve list. I didn't impress very much. There was a lot of big voices in this big group interview. I shrunk back a little bit, which I probably wouldn't do now, but I did at the time. Didn't do very well. Was only on the reserve list. But luckily, due to the news editor that had been there on the day, who was like the guest, he put in a word. He said, "No, I think this guy might have something," and I got through and got accepted on the course. And you know, little moments like that. So you might get knockbacks. The door might be shut in your face, but there'll be a time when, if you keep working at it, you know, the door will open for you. So you know, don't give up on that. And so I'd say, yeah, work hard, persistence, and you know, just be a good person. Be a good person. Speak to people. Be pleasant. Show them you're ambitious, but not overly ambitious. And those would be the pointers I'd say. But I'm still a firm believer. I know the landscape's changing. It's getting harder and harder to get into the industry. But I've seen with my own eyes, where I work at Sky, there are lots of good people there, and they've all got different stories to tell as to how they've got there. But I think the one thing I have to say with most of them is they're good people. They've got a bit of talent, and they've built up a lot of talent, and they've worked hard, and they deserve to be there. So that's what I'd say. Just keep going. Don't give up. Work hard.
Excellent. Very, very wise words there. Jules, thanks very much for your time. You know, as I say,
no problem.
I've learned an awful lot, and I really do appreciate you taking the time out to speak to me. And Europe this season, eh?
Oh, no problems. I say, Max, thanks again for asking, and all the best with the podcast. And hopefully, where are we now? September, May time, we might be looking at Europe or Cup final, maybe. Maybe the FA Cup's got our name on it this year, quite possibly. But yeah, it's been too long, isn't it? Like you said, you've never seen us win anything. And, I think back to 95 when I was 17. And if you told me then that we wouldn't win anything else, that I'd be sitting here when I'm 42, I just wouldn't have believed it. So it's about time, isn't it? And, in Carlo we trust. I think we're going in the right direction.
Most definitely. Thanks for listening, everybody.